Hello, everyone. I want to talk about friendships, relationships, how to build a genuine relationship. This is something that is important to all of us because all of us want friends, at least a certain number of friends that speak into our lives, people that we can be honest and transparent with. But knowing how to do that and establish these friends and foster them, well, sometimes we just need some practical help, and that is what I'm going to do in this video. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Rick Thomas, and I just finished a podcast episode for Life Over Coffee about how to identify and to benefit from genuine relationships. And so if you want to listen to that podcast, all you have to do is go to our website and look for episode 399, and then you can read the show notes that I have for you. You can also listen to that podcast if you wish, but I'm very glad that you're here and that you're watching the video. And so I want to give you some ideas about building relationships, because what you're going to find is that your friends are all over the friendship map, and knowing who is who and what is what, and you don't want to bring bad friends into your relationship, because that can not only be toxic, but it could also be harmful. But you want to know who these people are so that you can build with them. And then other people you want to primarily serve because they're not at that reciprocating place with you. And so I want to give you some ideas, and I've divided this video up into two parts. I want to give you some primary tips, and then I want to give you some practical ideas as we wrap up in a few moments. And so let's start with the primary tips. And number one is define friendship. I'll give you 7 tips here, but number one is define friendship. Now that is important. I've already mentioned that you can, on the farthest out here, and I'm using social media as an example because that's a good idea, and we all understand what social media is. Facebook friends are half friends. They're front-facing friends. You don't see the backside of them, and so it is literally impossible to know them as well as you need to know them in order to have a genuine relationship. You're not in their home. You're not within their family. You're not eating out with them. You're not in their community. You don't attend their church. These are people that you have met online, that you have some sort of relationship with. And of course, as Facebook says, that you are friends. You can like them. There doesn't have to be anything wrong with that. I'm not speaking about this from a negative perspective because I have a lot of Facebook friends, but I know who they are and what they are as far as how far I can go with them. And then as you move down the spectrum, you come over here and you have genuine friendships, and you truly can be vulnerable with them. You can be transparent and honest. They can accept the truth about you, and they can accept the good things about you, rather, and they can accept the bad things as well. And so I do trust that you don't have a one-size-fits-all idea of what friendship is, because that will create a number of problems, as you might imagine. And so under primary ideas here, number one, have a good working definition of what friendships is. And then number two is concentric circles. And what I mean by that is that you want to build these concentric circles, and then like pins on a map, you want to pin each person on that map depending on where they are as far as your understanding of what friendship is. And so the circles will begin, your most intimate circle, the epicenter, the microscopic epicenter of your friendship map is you and God, and you and God alone. Nobody knows you like God. He knows your thoughts from afar. He knows the thoughts and intentions of your heart. He knows all things, and so nothing can be more intimate and vulnerable with that. And so, of course, the best friend, as Jesus said, I now call you friends, and so the best friend that you have is God, and so you always want to foster that relationship and strengthen it. Some people come into their relationship with God with bringing a former manner of life, as we all do. But what's packed inside of some people's former manner of life are all sorts of things like guilt and shame and fear, for example. And if that's the kind of relationship that you have brought into how you connect with God, then that will hinder that relationship. And so what you want to do is you want to progressively grow and change so that that number one relationship can truly grow and you can receive the reciprocal benefits of it. And so that's the very center. Now, right outside of that center is where all human relationships begin. And the human relationship, this closest circle here, are your most intimate friends. And then as you move out, there will be other people. And I trust throughout this video, I will help you to be able to identify different people so that you could have a visual perception of where they are as far as in your relationship sphere. One of the ways to think about these concentric circles on your friendship map is point number 4 is that you can think about the life of Christ. The best that we can know from the Gospels as far as the accumulation of all his conversations that he seemed to spend more time with Peter, James, and John than the other 9 disciples. And so I would say that they would be his most intimate group. Right outside of his relationship with his Father, he had Peter, James, and John. And then right outside of that, there was another group of friends, the other nine apostles, the disciples. And then right outside of that, it was Mary and Martha and a number of other friends. Nicodemus came on a little bit later. And then out of that came the multitudes. And then we had the unregenerate, the Pharisees, those who did not love God, those who rejected God. And so you can kind of see from his daytimer that he had these fears within his network of how he related to people. And so if you can adapt that into what I was saying earlier in point number 2 about concentric circles, point number 3, the life of Christ. And then point number 4 is that it's okay to judge people. Now, what I mean by that, maybe you can use a synonym for judging people, and that would make you more comfortable, and that's fine, because I'm not uploading the word judge with uncharitable thoughts. I'm not at all. A synonym for judging people is assessing people, analyzing people, diagnosing people, trying to understand people. That is very important, because if you don't, you will go into any relationship naive. Now, I think all of you intuitively judge people, assess people. I imagine all of you do that. But I wanted to say it aloud because it is important that we do that in the most charitable way. I'm not talking about being cynical, suspicious, harsh, anything like that. I'm talking about assessing, judging, discernment, wisdom, having insight into people's lives, because if you don't filter each person that comes to you, you could really find yourself in a bad place. Now, it doesn't mean that you're right in your assumption. You could be wrong. I have been wrong many times as I have tried to assess a person because I want to know how I can relate to them, and I find like, I'm not sure about this person. That's a good start. But you don't give up, and then as you continue to interact with them, you find them moving closer on your friendship map, and that's a fantastic thing. But then the converse can happen as well. You meet someone and you just become buddies, maybe a little bit premature. And then as you get to know them, you realize, this is not the person that I thought they were, and so they start moving out. But number 4, it's okay to judge people or assess people. And then number 5, kind of implied already, is that friendships are static. Everybody on these concentric circles are static, meaning they're moving this way or that way. Nobody is standing still. Just like I said, you assess somebody and realize that you think they're this way, and then you understand that you're wrong, and then they begin to move closer. It's not static. There's fluid movement all the time. And then other people move in another direction. Some people mature. You meet a person that's young in Christ. Think about you, perhaps, if you have several years behind you as far as your relationship with Christ, well, then you understand that. You have changed a lot over these years. The Lord regenerated me when I was in 1984, and I've changed dramatically over those years. And hopefully I'll continue to progressively evolve as God continues to work in my life. And so relationships are not static. And then number 6, giving and receiving. And the reason I want to talk about this point is because you will always be giving more than you are receiving. That's just the way life is. And I'm saying that in a positive way. There doesn't have to be anything wrong with that. In fact, there's a lot that should be right about that, and for 2 reasons. One, it's the call of God on our life. He has called us to love Him and to love others more than ourselves, and so that is the call on our lives, and so that implies that we're always going to be pouring ourselves out for the gospel, and we want to do that. That is a very good thing. The other reason that this makes sense, that this is common sense, is because it is. I mean, if you look at your friendship map, you have a very tight circle of friends that is a small number, Peter, James, and John. So think about Christ for a moment. I mean, even if you put all 12 within that most intimate circle, it's still only 12. But whether it's 3, 4, 5, or 12, that's a tiny number of people. And then you think about all the people that he was poured himself out to. 5,000 people on one day as he fed them. And there was constant foot traffic to him, that they were wanting something from him. And so most of the people in our lives, they're going to want something from us. The only reason they come to us is because they want something from us. Now, that is a good thing. I said on the podcast a few moments ago that I'm thinking about devoting an entire podcast to this, because it's such an essential thing, because some people get tripped up by it, and then other people become burned out by it because they're always giving and they haven't. There's 2 things that might not be happening in their lives. One, they don't have that intimate circle that's feeding into them, those reciprocal relationships to where they are being encouraged in the Lord. It could be also that they are unwilling to say no. They don't have courage to say no to some people, and so they just say yes, 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 and then that just frustrates everybody. That's a time management nightmare, but it's born out of a person that doesn't have the backbone yet, doesn't have the courage. And by the way, if you struggle that way, then I would, if you don't have anybody that can help you and you want to talk it out, you can come to our ministry, come to our forums. We have resources that we can send you to help you to grow in this way, because it's essential. You can be easily run over by people if you don't have the courage to take a stand for yourself. But it's important to know that giving and receiving, you'll always be giving more than you're receiving, and that is supposed to be a good thing if we know how to do it the right way, which is one of the reasons that I'm doing this video. And then under primary points or primary ideas, number 7, take courage to clarify. And this is the courage piece that I was just talking about. If you don't have courage to clarify your relationships, to run them through your filter, and I'm going to talk in just a few moments of what that filter is, but if you don't have courage to run people through your wisdom filter, is what I call it, then that will cause a problem, as I've been saying. All right, so there are 7 primary ideas. And again, if you want to see the show notes of what I'm sharing here, go to episode 399 and you'll find all of this information plus the podcast there. Now, the second section, as I finish the video, I want to talk about practical tips. Practical tips. And under this point, I have 6 things to share with you. Number 1 is pray. Now, that's the most obvious statement to any answer. That's every answer to any question that's asked. What do I do about this? Well, the first thing you do is pray. But I mean this, I mean that, but also mean something else. I'm going to add the word participate. And so what you want to do is to pray and participate. Now, what I mean by that is you just can't pray, Lord, send me a friend. And then within 24 hours, somebody knocks on your door and they say, the Lord sent me to be your friend. I am here. Let's be friends. And you didn't do anything about it other than just ask God to do it. Well, that's not how this works. That's not how Christianity works. Christianity is a participation sport. And so we have to participate as secondary agents to the primary agent. And so you pray and you ask God, you beg God to give you a friend. And then you be active, you participate with anticipation because you prayed. And so if you pray with anticipation, you're going to be participating and you can expect that friend to come to you. And so if you don't have that friend in this most intimate circle, then pray and participate in the process. Number two, and it's kind of tied to that, and that is be a friend. You have to be a friend. There's people that talk about, I went to this church and this is an unfriendly church. That's not true. That would be exceptional for that to be true. You're saying those people aren't friendly. I would find that quite remarkable. How could all those people exist together and all of them just be unfriendly? That's like the wife came to me years ago as a marriage counselor. She said, my husband doesn't talk. There's a possibility that he doesn't talk because he's a mute. But the chances of that happening is very slim. And so the truth is that he does talk, but he doesn't talk to you. The truth is the church is friendly, but they're not friendly to you. And so part of the problem is that we can have an expectation that people are just going to pour themselves, invest themselves in our lives. And that's that passivity. There's a hint of passivity in there that I was talking about earlier. And that's not how friendships work. The gospel says go. The gospel is always penetrating. Now, they may have a myopic view of friendship. They may have therefore and no more. They may not have a good worldview of friendships. Therefore, they don't have that gospel-centered view. And so they're not seeking to pour themselves into your lives. So they take a passive approach, but they are friendly. But if you take a passive approach and they take a passive approach, then, they could say that you're kind of standoffish. And then you say they're not friendly, and both of you would be wrong. The truth is they're friendly, you're friendly, but somebody has got to make the move. And so point number two, be a friend. I don't ever expect anybody to intrude into my space. Sometimes it happens, and it's very nice when it does. But I would say 98% of the time, people don't do that intuitively. People just don't. That's not their instinct to just go and I'm going to make a friend with you. We have to be very intentionally intrusive about getting into people's lives. And so be a friend. I don't complain, and I trust you won't complain about people not being friendly, because one is the chances of it being true is minuscule, and two, it's really missing the point. It's putting the responsibility on them to do what God has called us to do, and they can be disobedient if they wish, but we can't. And so you want to go and be a friend. And then number three, remember that everyone is an image bearer. And it doesn't matter who the person is. This is what James talked about in chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. And so if it's your most intimate friend, you want to respect them. And if it's your enemy, you want to respect them. If they're Republican, if they're Democrat, if they're old, if they're young, if they're male, if they're female, if they believe what you do, don't believe what you do, if they're every color under the sun, it doesn't matter. You respect them. Now, please understand, when I say respect, I'm not saying that you never criticize, correct, or confront somebody. And so we don't want to mash up respect and criticize, confront, and correct someone. We don't want to mash those things up as though I can't do those things because I respect the person. Actually, it would be disrespect if you didn't confront someone, because if you really respected them, you want to speak into their lives because you care for their souls. And so you want to respect them. For example, a wife needs to respect her husband. A husband needs to respect his wife. You want to respect each other, because who do you want to confront you, to critique you, or to correct you? Well, you want somebody who respects you. And so it doesn't matter where they are on this friendship map that I've built out here. You want to make sure that you respect everyone, and the reason is that God made them in his image. And then number 4, if someone tries to manipulate or manage you without pouring into your life, they are telling you that they're not going to be your most intimate friend. That's just one illustration of what somebody can do to you. They can try to manage you, manipulate you. They can gaslight you. But they are defining the relationship, and that's how I like to think about it. People will define the kind of relationship that they have with me. For example, a number of years ago, Lucia and I had a couple over at our home. We were new at this church, and so we wanted to get to know people because, again, we were being proactive. We weren't waiting for somebody to knock on our door. I'm not sure that that would ever happen, but I understand how this works, and because of that, we wanted to be intrusive in people's lives, and so we just started pinging people and say, hey, come over, let's do dinner. I mean, it's a very similar thing that's going on now. We were shut down for 2 years because of the pandemic, and so we have been getting back into the hospitality mode. Very few people invite us over their home. I think it's happened a couple of times in the last 6 months or so forth, but we have invited several people over to our home because we're not waiting for that to happen. We want to be intentionally intrusive, and so we invited this couple over to our home, and I was having this great relationship with this guy. I mean, we were talking about Christ and what God was doing in our lives, and it was really good. And then somewhere in the conversation, his wife started talking, and she started running down a tick sheet of all the people in the church and what's wrong with them. And as she was doing that, we didn't correct her at that time. Our hope was to have we did divert the conversation, but our hope was maybe in the future we could have a conversation with her about her gossip and slandering. But we decided that, well, she just defined the kind of relationship that we're going to have with her. I mean, we're not going to bring her into our inner circle because I don't trust her. If this is what she would do with us, then about other people, then I pretty much know what she would do about us. And that's not a person that I would want to share my most vulnerable information with. And so identify people, again, judge them, assess them, try to discern them so that you can place them. But please be warned that if they do this, then what you have is a non-reciprocating friend, and that leads to point number 5. Don't share your most authentic self with non-reciprocating friends. Now, I want to focus on this word reciprocating, because what does this inner circle look like? What it looks like is people who are reciprocating with you. I talked about earlier where you're always going to be pouring out more than you are receiving, which is the call of the gospel on our lives. But you want to be intentional about building relationships, hoping that people can move in. Some people can move into this epicenter. But who are these people? There are people who are reciprocating, meaning they can meet you at your level. They can communicate with you competently about the gospel, about the Bible. They can speak into your life. They're not afraid of you. They're compassionate friends. They love you. They can receive the good things about you, and they can receive the bad things about you, and they can steward that. And that's a reciprocating friend, and that's what you're looking for. The lady that I just described to you, she's not a reciprocating friend. No way, no how. And so you want to find those people. We're having this conversation the other night at our dinner table, and I told our children that if you die with 5 of these friends, you're going to die a wealthy person. I mean, to have 1 or 2, 3. I mean, that's really something special. To have 5, that's really good, to where you can really talk about virtually anything. That is a very cool thing, and the mercy of God. And so number 5, don't share your most authentic self with non-reciprocating friends. And then point number 6 under practical tips is, what are the characteristics or what are the aspects of a reciprocating friend? Now, there are 4 things that you're looking for primarily. The first one is character. Now, character is foundational to everything that we do. And so character is foundational. If they're not of good character, I mean, hopefully God would give you the insight to be able to discern that. For those who are dating, by the way, it's essential that they can shut off whatever emotion they have going on about this relationship and truly key in on the character of that person. Because if you see red flags in that person, and you're ushering them in to the most intimate space in your life, that's foolish. It's just foolish. And so you want to look what kind of character are they, and then on top of that, what you're looking for is competence. Competence is that they're adept in the Word of God, and they can meet you where you are and communicate God's Word in a practical way with you as you do to them, because it is reciprocating. And then number 3, what you're looking for is courage. Courage is absolutely essential, because you don't want rubber stamping friends. You want people who love you, they have the competence and to speak into your life, they do it respectfully, they are of utmost character like you, and you want that courageous friend. Having a bunch of rubber stampers around you is an echo chamber that is really poisonous, it's toxic, and that's not what you want. So you want character, and then you want competence on top of that. And then you want courage, and then you want compassion on top of that. Courage and compassion are binary. They come together in the same package, because if you have courage without compassion, you'll probably, it'd be easy to become harsh and impatient with somebody. If you have compassion without courage, then you could have mercy run amok, where it looks like compassion, but the person doesn't have the courage to say no. And so compassion by itself can be problematic. Courage by itself can be problematic. But when you bring them together and you have courage and compassion, you have a great thing. And so those are 6 practical ideas. I'm going to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes, but I'm going to finish with 3 questions for you to think about. And again, you can find all of this information at episode 399. Number 1, who are those people in your life who are reciprocal friends? Who are them? Name them. Do you have people that you fully trust as much as you possibly can, or appropriately can, and that they are reciprocating, that you are benefiting from the relationship and they are benefiting from you? That is a rich place to be in human dynamic relationships. And so who are those people? And by the way, if you identify them and have 1 or 2, it would probably be good to let them know. Send them a note. Thank them when you see them next for being that kind of friend. Maybe you can share this information with them, and you can both rejoice in God's goodness in your life. If you don't have that kind of reciprocating friendship, then I would encourage you to pray and act and participate. As I was saying before, if you need some assistance in any way, please come to our ministry and ask about that. Question number 2, will you always be praying and actively seeking for those kinds of friends? Do not be passive, do not be timid, be courageous and intrude into people's lives. You want to penetrate their friend bubble and see what's there. You never know. But if you pray, you may be surprised by grace. And so always be praying and actively seeking those kinds of relationships. And then number 3, will you always be trying to make people better friends, or make your best friends better? And what I mean by that is that you want to identify these friends wherever they are on your friendship map and just pour into their lives, and you want them to move closer and closer and closer, because the more mature and grace-centered and gospel-centered and loving that they become, they benefit from it. And of course, that is the call of the gospel. We want to make each person better. And so we're asking God to work through us into other people's lives so that they can have a greater experience with Christ. And so the question is, will you always be trying to make people better friends wherever they are, and then make your best friends better? This is episode 399, the podcast, and the title of it is How to Identify and Benefit from Genuine Friendships. Thank you so much for watching the video.